We are here with you, our fans and our listeners, and we are here to talk about the edutainment that is Islam in our society. We are here to bond. We are here to communicate. We are here to be one as a community. And with all of that lovely, feel good, mushy stuff, ladies and gentlemen, the hardest working Imam that I know, Imam Azhar.
Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace to everyone who is tuning in live tonight for our uh, recent and, of course, most recent edition or episode of Raw Islam with Imam Azhar and Brother Carl. We welcome you with open arms and open hearts tonight to this late evening edition in the East Coast and early evening edition for those in the Pacific Coast. And we don't even know what time it is in the other parts of the world. So, wherever you are, uh, we say hello to you and aloha. Well, with that being said, we are coming to you in the middle of February where it's quite chilly, or it's supposed to be quite chilly around the country at this time. But with climate change, we're getting summer weather in winter times. But nevertheless, we have topics that you, as our audience, select because you are the reason why we are here every week. We come to you putting aside whatever we have, looking forward to this discussion with all of you, and your engaging with us is what keeps us going. So, without further ado, I'd like to ask Brother Carl to enlighten us as to what were the topics of discussion that he chose for this week, and what was the topic that you all chose for tonight's episode. Brother Carl?
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you follow us on Twitter, VENNNETWORK, Venn Network. Every week we post a poll. Typically it's supposed to be Monday. This week it was late, and it was completely my fault, and I apologize. I have been extremely under the weather, which is why we didn't have a show last week. But make sure you follow us on Twitter, VENNNETWORK. And we post a poll up there every week where you, our fans, you, our listeners, you, our community, get to take part in this poll so that you get to choose the topic that we will talk about. And ladies and gentlemen, this week's poll was the pains of parenthood. Is the world ending? And of course, my personal favorite, what's the deal with? And I am proud to announce that this week's winner is the pains of parenthood. Because as parents, our children give us pains, and it's in the Quran. It says that heaven lies at the feet of the mother, so your mother has to love you and your mother has to respect you. But with some of the extreme BS that we put on our parents, how can we continue to love them without trying to strangle them? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our topic for this evening. So with that, back to you, sir.
Well, there's so much to see on that. I really don't even know where to begin with that, but let me just put in perspective. Parenting has become such a daunting task in our society, in our world today. I'm not here to blame all those who opt out and say, you know what, it's not a task for us. We don't want to do it, or I don't want to do it. There are couples who don't want to have children because they dread exactly what Carl said and more. And there are people who don't want to get married because they don't want to have children exactly for the same reason. So, guess what's happened? In this society, our global society, where there's such a misunderstanding and misconception in reference to marriage and relationships between parents and children, or children and parents, that people are actually opting out of it altogether instead of actually addressing it and trying to resolve it. I really don't feel that the children of today or the parents of today are evil, or they're wicked, or they have bad intentions, or that they are deliberately disrespectful, or disrespectful to their parents, or ignoring their children. There's so many factors that play into where our society is today. It's like, again, the sponge analogy I've given a few times on this show. If you have a sponge and you wipe with it red ink, and you wring it out and you wash it out, you would have gotten most of the ink residue out of the sponge, but the color will remain. And so that doesn't mean that the sponge is bad. It just got markings on it. In the same way, parents and children going out into the world every day from their houses, from jobs to chores to errands to medical appointments or school, after school programs, before school programs, friend circles, and the lot, when they all come home, they have a lot of markings on them. And those markings are then displayed to the opposite side. It may be perceived that the parents' markings are disliking to the children, or the children's markings are disliking to the parents. What we forget in the overall discussion is that they're still sponges. The children are still the sponges of love, and so are the parents. I think there's just so much misconception, Carl, when it comes to raising children. We do know that we are living in a society where we have more flexibility and we have more facilities at our disposal that were supposed to be used to lessen the burden of our stresses or the stress factors. Despite it, it seems that we're using those same facilities as the curse upon our houses. That is the reason our houses are breaking. We all are in the same boat. If you're coming into our show tonight as a parent, as a child, as someone who is newlywed, or someone who's been through the whole 9 yards and is happy to be out of the parenting aspect and now are welcoming the grandchildren, we've all gone and we all are going through these phases. The question is, how can we change a perception on this and not see it as a curse or a problem? How can we see our children's anger as a cry for help and not as a word of disrespect? How can we see our parent being distant from us as them trying to dissolve their pain in themselves and not expose it or express it to everyone, including them, with the fear that it would hurt them? How can we do all this, Carl? Should be you know the uh, the focus of our discussion tonight, and I hope that's what we can do. I just want to ask you, what's your thoughts on this topic, because it was a very unique topic to be selected. And after hearing from you, I'd like to hear from our listeners who are engaging with us. Doesn't matter how many of you are on tonight. I would like you to address this topic from any angle: a single parent, a parent who is married, a child who is with their parents, a child who's with one of their parents or without their parents. I'd like us all to understand this. Where do we feel the problems lie? And hopefully, we can create a discussion where in the next 26 minutes or 24 minutes, we end up by saying, you know what, this wasn't really a problem. It was something else. It was an opportunity for betterment. It wasn't a push, rather, it was a pull for help. And so, Carl, tell us, where are we going wrong?
So I don't know if we're going wrong as parents, or if life itself is just different and therefore the challenges change. Because it's we didn't have phones, we didn't have on-demand access, we didn't have, I know my wife and I were just talking the other day here. We were talking about depression and anxiety in young women. And what we were saying was that, the example I gave is that when she was young and when I was young, when you were checking out at the grocery store, you'd see your Red Book, you'd see your the Cosmo magazines, you'd see these things, and maybe a friend's parent bought one, and you'd read it, and you'd look at the images, and that was how these young women got their negative body images, is from these articles and from these magazines, but they were published once a month, and that was it. But today, with like Instagram, it's all they see every minute, every day, every second. There's a new photo of some woman saying, "Look how beautiful I am," and look how luxurious I am, and just all of that. So I mean, the it just there's a cutoff and there's a drop off. So I'm not sure if like I don't necessarily think we're doing worse as parents so much as we weren't ready for what was coming. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know that our daughters and even our sons would be exposed to material and lifestyles just by picking up their phone to text their friend, you know? And so I think that plays a large part in it. I mean, and that's my opinion. But I think with that, the parenting challenges have changed, and we somehow have to change with it, which is the more difficult part because we're not ready for this. We don't have tools for this. Nobody told us how to deal with this.
But let's be real here, Carl. No one told any of our parents how to do this, right? No one told the past parents, the present parents, or the upcoming parents how to do this. The
It's
question
true.
is, it's all going down to priorities, right? What is my priorities and why? Like, yes, there's distractions. No doubt there are distractions of social media. But you know what, Carl? These are such weak distractions in comparison to the distractions that our kids had back in the days. And let me explain that. Back in the days, it was a physical thing. You can actually go to the park and get drugs. You can go down the streets and hang out with the wrong people. You can physically do good or bad. And you were out of the house all day for the most part. You could jump on your bike and get out of the house and go. And, parents really wouldn't mind. But the opportunities to do bad physically was equally there. Now it's virtually, like you could virtually curse someone out or virtually
Yeah.
put someone up or call them out or, flirt with someone or whatever else, but it's all virtual. The question is, where is my priorities? I think that we all feel that there is no priority for ourselves and each other as a family, and that is what gives way for those people, the children or the parents, to go into these habits, maybe be physically or virtually. And let me give a different example. We say that money is tempting, right? And people are tempted by money, and money is power and fame. I always tell people this, and I want you to reflect on this. Back in the days, the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, their era, and much later also, the currency was real gold and silver coins. It was real. You understand? You had gold. I want people to understand this. Today, gold went up and past $1,600 because the uncertainty in the global market with China and Wuhan and everything else. Think about this. Gold, a coin of gold in your pocket is what they had. They had gold and silvers and stones, and this was currency. This is what they bartered with. This is what they traded with. This is what they bought and sold with. This is what it was about. And they had an ability through faith as a priority to denounce the gold coin and say, "You're nothing, God is something," right? This is how they put priority of God over the creation of God. And here we are today. We have paper in our pockets, paper that does not even back the gold standard, but
No.
we're so deluded by it. What has happened? Our priorities have gone upside down. So I feel that in our street when we used to live, there'd be like one or two homes our parents like, okay, don't go hang out there. And those children were quite vividly bad. Bad nature, the way they dressed, the attitude that they held up in a society which didn't have that. Why? We would see that there was no priority between the children and the parents for each other. Granted, everyone is busy, but people were busy back then also, Carl. People say, oh, back in your days, houses were like 20, 30,000. Now they're like 200, 300,000. But the question was the income was just about the same, right? In the sense that the income was so low that 20, 30,000 seemed a lot. A car was 7,000, 5,000, but the income was very little. So the 5,000 seemed a lot. Groceries come, a whole cart you could fill up in $60, but
Yep.
$60 was a lot. Again, I think we're not understanding that the trials in it are the same. Things haven't evolved. What has evolved is we've gone from a physical distraction to a virtual distraction, but the problem still lies to be the same. A priority in our life for ourselves, our family, and for each other, and how much we're investing in those three priority for the other. That's basically to me what the problem is. But again, our listeners or you can disagree, and we'd love to have this conversation because the crux of the matter is what we want from each other. This is my perspective from what I've grown up seeing, and I'm sure other people have seen different. So please, I'd like to hear from our listeners, Carl.
Okay, so we have Sister Layla. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Layla. Welcome. She says, Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullah barakatuh. It's really hard sometimes, subhanallah, especially as a single parent trying to find balance for means of discipline. And I would echo that, and I would also say that discipline sometimes changes with age. And the older they get when they need discipline, it's still it becomes even that much harder to reprimand them. So that's my thought before I turn it back. But Sunshine is with us. Good evening, Sunshine. Thank you for joining us. I know you're up past your bedtime, which we're thankful for. She says, I think too many try to avoid the pitfalls of our own parents and become too lenient or too harsh. Times have changed, so parenting must evolve. 100% agree with you on that. Or they parent just like their parents did and wonder why things didn't work. You parent based on your values and the temperament of the child. Parenting, to some degree, has to be personalized. I agree with Sister Layla in that single parenting is tough. Community parenting seems to no longer exist, which was helpful in the past. And I was going to say, as I was reading that first sentence, I was going to say, it does seem, you remember it takes a village to raise a family. We don't do that anymore. There is no village. Because, as Imam Mazhar was saying, I remember being a kid and we'd take our bikes and we'd ride up and down Main Street, and it was not a thing. It wasn't an issue. It was no big deal. And it was what it was. But I wouldn't trust, and it's not that I don't trust my children for that today. It's the people around that I don't trust with my children in that kind of scenario. But there you go. Back to you, sir.
Well, two things here. For our single moms out there and single dads, not everything has to be considered in our minds as a tragedy or someone's divorced. I know a single dad right now who I'm working with. His wife died of cancer, and he's got two kids to raise. Single parenting is tough. It's hard, and pure respect to all our single mom and dads doing the great work. But I just want to say at the same time, uh, Mary, peace be upon her, was a single mom, and why she had the power to go through wasn't because of the fact that she was given a miracle child, Jesus, peace be upon him, but because her mother also raised her as a single mom. Imran passed away before Hannah gave birth to Mary, peace be upon all of them. But the question is not, again, it's hard. Everything in life is hard. The question is, where is my priorities? What are the distractions hindering me from that priority? Uh, yes, there are more so-called avenues of distractions, but they're the same types of distraction, right? You want to call it Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. It's all the same type of distraction coming from one avenue. They're not coming from multiple avenues. And so the question is, when would it be a priority for a husband and wife to put this cell phone down and actually talk to each other? It goes up to priorities. Having a husband and not having a wife, or whatever the case may be, or vice versa, it all goes down to what priorities you assume to be your priorities. That being said, parenting, in whichever case it is, I completely believe in my heart Allah will give the strength and the ability to all people to help them through this. If they really want to get this done, Allah's going to help them. And the fact that you are where you are tonight, doesn't matter how battered your body is and how bruised up your limbs are from all the work that you do and how exhausted your mind is, you got till here, and that's through the help of God. And you know that God is with you in this, and He'll continue to be there with you. Despite all those pains, Allah is allowing you to make a step for the next day. So stay strong on that. Um, as for the village, yes, we had the concept at one time that a village raised a family, and so now it's time for us to raise a family to make the village once more. That's what we need to do. Back to you, Carl, on this.
Ooh, deep.
That's
Yeah, we have one more question, and I believe it was from Sunshine, who says, learning to parent an adult has been a challenge. And I would also echo that because, I mean, I think my children, my oldest might be about the same age as her oldest, but might be a little bit younger. But I do find that there is this like 17-year-old threshold and up where parenting becomes different and learning it becomes different, because my oldest is 23 or will be 23 this year. So there are different challenges, and when they're young and they and I'm using this as a real example because this actually happened with him, but when they're young and they steal the candy from the kitchen, you can spank them with the shib shib and it's okay. But when they're 28 and they don't have a job, which my son does have a job, alhamdulillah, but when they're 28 and don't have a job and still couch surfing, hitting them with the shib shib doesn't work very well.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard when the waves are coming up against you. It's hard when you're facing the ocean of uncertainty and you'd rather run than stand there. Now, there's two types of people at this juncture. You and I, Carl, and everyone who's out there, Sunshine and Laila and a lot. As parents, we are standing in front of this vast ocean, and the ocean is bringing its waves to us. We could do two things. We can be lunatics to stand there and see the tsunami come and drown us, or we could run. When it comes to a tsunami effect, we can't come up against it. Thus far, our global culture is not a tsunami effect on our homes. It's only as impactful as the avenues that we have created in our homes for it to enter. If you seal the bottom of your door, the top of the door, the sides of your door, then the cold air won't come in. You could have the heater on in the house, but if there's cracks, the draft is truly going to come in. So it's time to fill those drafts. And that draft comes in from cell phones, TVs, open cable, open internet, magazines, radios. These are things that are allowing culture to actually penetrate into the four walls of our home. If you can minimize that or monitor that, you should be quite fine, to be frank. Now, we're not in the tsunami yet, so if we were, God forbid, we're not going to stand there. We're going to run and run as fast as we can, hoping that we'll be saved. But right now, it's just a regular day at the ocean. The waves are high. You can stand there and say, I can't swim, which you cannot, but you can get a surfboard and start surfing. So you'll see where the tides are high, people will enjoy surfing while others will sit down complaining they can't swim. So let's not be those who, as parents, say, I can't swim right now because the tide is high and the waves are strong. Let's surf. And surfing is taking the ocean on and challenging it. And even if you fall a few times, you would have crossed through many different waves before that fall occurred. And who knows, when our final fall occurs, our kids are ready to surf the waves themselves, because the world is always going to be tough. We had uncertainty and we've had problems back in those days, and we're going to continue having uncertainties and problems today also. The question is, they come in different shapes and forms and for different reasons. So I'll advise our listeners tonight in our late show, and just keep in mind that Isha prayer for me here, the late night prayer, starts at 8, which is 9 o'clock your time. So Carl will be letting you know in a few days or before our next poll if the time changes. But till then, we only have literally 2 weeks till the time does change. And when the time does change, I think inshallah, the time 9 p.m. for all of you, and for myself 8 would be perfectly fine. But till then, let us tonight take a paper and write down what are the priorities that we can make for each other. Even though our children may be stubborn, miserable, old, lost hope, let's try. Our effort should not entail results. If we're making effort with the hope that the results will reciprocate what we're doing, then we failed. Just hang up your boots and leave the house. But if your efforts are about, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, even though the results may not be what I want it to be, you're going to succeed, inshallah. And so are your children. And if it's children, you do your part, and so are your parents. They're going to succeed also, inshallah. Back to you, Carl.
I'm just going to run through a couple of more comments here, and then we will wrap it up for the night. Sister Layla says, what a great example, mashallah. She feels that the distractions were less back when we were kids. She says now the kids come home and they want to spend time on their phones, iPads, etc. Alhamdulillah, she has set limits and boundaries for her children. Oversimplifying children. Yes, you can minimize. It can be done through discussion and guiding, Sunshine, but you're right about minimizing the access at home versus when they're not home, and that is a different. That is something else. That's a completely different conversation. But, Imam Azhar, final thoughts?
Final thoughts is I have been really worried about family, so thank you so much, Carl, for bringing the topic. I'm not saying I have a perfect family. It's tough for me too with the children and the spouse, and managing everything on a daily basis. It's never gonna be smooth sails, never supposed to be smooth sails. But the fact that we're working on it is indicative of the fact that we're trying. We don't have a guide for parenting in any religion or any culture. Why? Because that guide is in your heart, it's in your gut, and it differs based on times and circumstances. So you can't resort to, okay, what happens if the window wipers is not working? Because this may not be window wipers not working, it's working, but the window wiper blades are done. So there's different ways to kind of analyze the situation. If God's given you parents, you'll understand how to work with your parents. And if God's given you children, He's going to give you the understanding, inspiration, how to work with them. Give yourself that space for that understanding to come. Take away some negativity, create some quiet zone for that goodness to come in and enrich all of us in the homes. And my final statement for tonight would be this: the fact that we all come home at night, doesn't matter what time it is, some come home at 4, some come home at 8. The fact we come home is because that place means something to all of us. And let's understand what that place means. So take a moment tonight and write down on your notepad what home means to you. And if you can write that down as children and as parents, take this exercise up. I promise you, you'll find amazing similarities. You're all on the same page, but just on different parts of the page. May Allah protect all our families, and may Allah allow all of us, all humans, everyone who's listening and beyond, to the day that this transmission reaches to whoever it reaches. May Allah allow us to do what's best as families to restore and to uphold the value of the family system. Ameen. Amen.
Ameen.
Thank you.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of another episode of the Raw Islam Podcast with Imam Azhar. To learn more about this podcast and the other podcasts on the Venn Network, head over to vennetwork.org, where you can find our back catalog, and you can also get some really cool swag like the one I'm wearing, because the new logo isn't up in the store yet. And you can help support the network, and you can help support the hosts, and you can help us reach a wider audience. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will say Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.